Serums claiming to contain growth factors and exosomes now range from $12 to $400, but most people can't tell whether they're buying genuine cell signaling technology or expensive water with a fancy label. I'm Dr. Elena Voss, and I specialize in breaking down exactly what these molecules do, how to evaluate them, and whether they're worth the investment compared to ingredients you already know. You're listening to Luxury Beauty on a Budget podcast. Quick heads up, all the research, data, and script for this episode are written and verified by real humans, myself included. But the voice you're hearing is AI generated, which lets us get you more episodes more frequently without compromising on accuracy or depth. If you've been listening for a while, thank you. I don't take it for granted that you keep coming back. And if you're new here, welcome. I'm really glad you found the show. We release new episodes every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, breaking down ingredients, routines, and products in a way that's rooted in science, but won't drain your bank account. Now, let's jump into bioregenerative actives. You're about to learn what makes bioregenerative actives different from every other ingredient in your routine, and more importantly, how to tell if a formulation actually works or if you're just paying for marketing. So, what exactly are bioregenerative actives? They're biologically derived or biomimetic compounds that trigger cellular communication pathways involved in tissue repair, collagen synthesis, and barrier regeneration. Here's the key difference. Unlike traditional actives that work through chemical mechanisms, vitamin C stabilizing collagen or retinol upregulating gene transcription, bioregenerative actives function as signaling molecules. They don't force a biochemical reaction. They deliver information. The category includes growth factors like EGF, TGF-beta, and VEGF. These are proteins ranging from 6 to 45 kilodaltons that bind to cell surface receptors and initiate cascades affecting proliferation, differentiation, and matrix production. Then you've got exosomes, extracellular vesicles measuring 30 to 150 nanometers that contain lipids, proteins, RNA, and microRNA. They transfer regulatory instructions between cells. Cytokines are small signaling proteins, typically 5 to 20 kilodaltons, that modulate inflammation, immune response, and wound healing. Interleukins and interferons fall into this group. And finally, peptide fragments. Not full peptides, but bioactive sequences cleaved from larger structural proteins during natural remodeling processes. What separates bioregenerative actives from standard peptides in skincare is their mimicry of endogenous repair mechanisms. Your skin already produces these molecules during wound healing and cellular turnover. Topical application attempts to supplement or amplify those signals when natural production declines, which begins around age 25 for most growth factors. Here's the complexity. These are large, fragile molecules. Growth factors degrade rapidly at room temperature. Exosomes require specific pH ranges and sterile packaging. Many formulations use plant-derived or synthetic analogs rather than human-derived sources, which affects receptor binding affinity and efficacy. Price per ounce metrics are misleading here. A serum with around 10 parts per million of unstable EGF performs worse than a formulation with around 50 parts per million of correctly encapsulated biosynthetic growth factors. The molecular engineering matters more than the ingredient list. Now let's talk about how these actives actually work. They function through paracrine signaling. Cells release molecules that affect neighboring cells, not the original producer. When you apply a serum containing epidermal growth factor, the molecule has to penetrate the stratum corneum without degrading, which is challenging for proteins over 6 kilodaltons. It needs to reach the viable epidermis where target receptors exist, bind to specific cell surface receptors, EGFR for EGF, TGF-beta receptors for transforming growth factor, trigger intracellular signaling cascades, often MAKP/ERK or PI3K/AKT pathways, and finally initiate gene transcription changes that increase production of collagen, elastin, hyaluronic acid, or defensive enzymes. Let's get specific about growth factors. EGF, epidermal growth factor, is 6 kilodaltons, small enough to penetrate if correctly formulated, but easily inactivated by pH below 5.5 or above 7.5. Clinical studies using recombinant human EGF at concentrations of 0.1 to 1 part per million show measurable increases in epidermal thickness and barrier recovery rates after UV exposure. The mechanism? EGF binds to EGFR, a tyrosine kinase receptor, phosphorylating downstream proteins that activate transcription factors like CFOS and CJUN, which upregulate keratinocyte proliferation genes. Budget formulations often use plant-derived oligopeptides marketed as EGF-like actives. Barley seed extract and Narcissus tezeta bulb extract contain low molecular weight sequences that weakly bind to EGFR, but with 10 to 30% of the receptor affinity of recombinant human EGF. Not useless, just less efficient. TGF-beta, transforming growth factor beta, is larger, 25 kilodaltons as a dimer, and governs fibroblast activity and extracellular matrix production. It's rarely used in its native form topically due to penetration challenges. Instead, you'll see peptide agonists that mimic TGF-beta receptor activation. Matrixyl 3000, which is palmitoyl oligopeptide plus palmitoyl tetrapeptide 7, operates through this pathway, stimulating collagen type 1 and type 3 synthesis at concentrations usually around 3 to 5%. Moving on to exosomes. These are lipid bilayer vesicles secreted by nearly all cell types, containing a cargo of proteins, lipids, messenger RNA, and microRNA. When applied topically, exosomes theoretically fuse with recipient cell membranes, delivering their contents directly into the cytoplasm, bypassing receptor-mediated pathways entirely. The appeal? Exosomes can carry hundreds of signaling molecules simultaneously, creating a multi-targeted regenerative effect. Studies from the National Institutes of Health demonstrate that stem cell-derived exosomes promote wound closure, reduce inflammation markers like TNF-alpha and IL-6, and increase fibroblast migration rates in lab settings. Here's the problem: stability and standardization. Exosome preparations vary wildly in concentration, which is measured as particle count per milliliter, purity, and cargo composition. A serum claiming plant stem cell exosomes might contain 10 to the 8th particles per milliliter of minimally characterized vesicles with unknown bioactivity, while pharmaceutical-grade human adipose-derived exosomes used in clinical trials contain 10 to the 11th particles per milliliter with defined microRNA profiles. Most affordable formulations, $15 to $50, use botanical exosomes from sources like Centella asiatica cell culture, Malus domestica, that's apple stem cell extract, or Budleigh davidi, which is butterfly bush meristem cells. These contain exosome-like nanoparticles with anti-inflammatory properties and some growth-promoting activity, but they're not equivalent to human mesenchymal stem cell exosomes found in the $200 to $400 serums in terms of fibroblast simulation or collagen deposition rates. Let's talk about cytokines and conditional signaling. Cytokines modulate immune response and inflammation. Interleukin-10 and interferon gamma reduce inflammatory cascades in conditions like rosacea or post-procedure recovery. Unlike growth factors that directly stimulate proliferation, cytokines adjust the cellular environment to favor repair over inflammation. You won't see cytokines listed by name often. They're expensive and unstable. Instead, look for Boswellia serrata extract standardized to boswellic acids, which inhibits 5-lipoxygenase and reduces IL-1 beta signaling. Bisabol from chamomile downregulates TNF-alpha and IL-6 release from keratinocytes. Yeast ferment extracts from Saccharomyces or Piscia contain beta-glucans and mannan oligosaccharides that modulate cytokine profiles through toll-like receptor pathways. The advantage of using plant extracts or ferments is cost and stability. Boswellia extract at 2% costs roughly 8 cents per 30 milliliter bottle to formulate. Recombinant IL-10 at effective concentrations costs around $12 to $15 per 30 milliliters. Both reduce inflammatory markers. The plant extract just takes longer and works less specifically. So why do bioregenerative actives matter? Standard actives like retinol, niacinamide, and vitamin C work through direct biochemical mechanisms. Retinol binds to retinoic acid receptors and forces gene transcription changes. Niacinamide inhibits enzymes and improves barrier lipid synthesis. Vitamin C donates electrons to stabilize collagen crosslinks. They're universal interventions that impose a specific outcome. Bioregenerative actives are conditional. They provide signals that cells interpret based on their current state. A fibroblast exposed to TGF-beta will increase collagen production if it has adequate amino acid precursors and isn't under oxidative stress. An exosome delivering microRNA 21 will promote keratinocyte migration if the barrier is compromised and migration pathways are already primed. This conditionality is why bioregenerative actives shine in post-procedure recovery. Laser, microneedling, chemical peels, and barrier repair scenarios, where skin is actively trying to heal but lacks sufficient endogenous signaling molecules. It's also why they underperform in chronic photoaging compared to retinol. Passive sun damage doesn't activate the repair pathways these molecules exploit. Here's some performance context. In a 12-week study comparing 0.5% retinol to a growth factor cocktail containing EGF, TGF-beta, and VEGF at combined 5 parts per million, retinol outperformed on pigmentation reduction, 28% versus 14% melanin index decrease, and surface smoothness, 31% versus 19% profilometry improvement. The growth factor serum showed superior results in barrier recovery metrics, 42% increase in ceramide content versus 23% for retinol, and faster TEWL, that's transepidermal water loss, normalization after tape stripping. This tells you use retinol for structural agent concerns like wrinkles, tone, and texture. Use bioregenerative actives for barrier compromise, sensitivity, and recovery acceleration. Budget-friendly formulations can be remarkably effective if they focus on stable growth factor analogs like copper peptides and matrikines and high-concentration plant exosomes rather than attempting to include trace amounts of expensive recombinant proteins. A $28 serum with 5% Centella asiatica exosome extract often outperforms a $200 serum with 1 part per million unstable EGF and filler ingredients. Now let's break down the types and variations of bioregenerative actives, starting with growth factor variants. Recombinant human growth factors are produced via genetically engineered bacteria or yeast. They're the most stable and receptor-specific. You'll find them in serums ranging from $80 to $400. Common types include SH oligopeptide 1, which is synthetic human EGF at 6 kilodaltons, effective at 0.1 to 1 part per million, SH polypeptide 1, basic FGF at 18 kilodaltons, stimulates fibroblast proliferation, and SH polypeptide 9, a VEGF analog, promotes microcirculation. Plant-derived growth factor mimetics are extracted from barley, soy, or other plant sources. Lower cost, moderate efficacy, effective range 1 to 5% weight by weight, receptor affinity 20 to 40% of human equivalents. Biomimetic peptides are short sequences designed to activate specific growth factor receptors without using full protein structures. Matricil he1000, matricil synth 6, and argireline fall here. Technically peptides, but functioning through growth factor pathway activation. For exosome categories, stem cell-derived exosomes come from human adipose tissue, bone marrow, or umbilical cord mesenchymal stem cells. Highest bioactivity but expensive, $150 to $400 per ounce. Particle counts, 10 to the 10th to 10 to the 12th per milliliter. They contain multiple microRNAs targeting collagen genes like COL1A1 and COL3A1, matrix metalloproteinases, and inflammation regulators. Plant stem cell exosomes come from botanical meristem cultures, centella, apple, grape, argon. More affordable at $15 to $60 per ounce. Particle counts, 10 to the 8th to 10 to the 10th per milliliter. Primarily anti-inflammatory and antioxidant activity. Limited structural protein stimulation compared to human-derived versions. Conditioned media derivatives are the supernatant from cell cultures containing exosomes plus secreted growth factors, cytokines, and metabolites. Less pure than isolated exosomes, but sometimes more effective due to synergistic factor combinations. Cost around $40 to $120 per ounce. Here's something critical: formulation delivery systems. The molecule means nothing if it degrades before reaching target cells. Stabilization methods include liposomal encapsulation, phospholipid vesicles 100 to 300 nanometers that protect growth factors and improve penetration. This adds around $8 to $15 per ounce to production costs. Cyclodextrin complexation uses molecular cage structures to stabilize peptides and small proteins. It's a budget-friendly option at around $2 to $4 per ounce cost. Lyophilized or freeze-dried formats store growth factors as powder, activated with a mixing solution before use. Maximum stability, but inconvenient. You'll see this in professional kits around $100 to $200. And airless pump packaging prevents oxidation and contamination. This should be standard for any serum claiming bioactive growth factors. When evaluating bioregenerative serums under $50, look for formulations using encapsulation technology and packaging that protects from air and light exposure. A $35 serum with liposomal delivery often outperforms a $180 serum in a dropper bottle without stabilization.
Let me address some frequently asked questions. First, what are bioregenerative actives and how do they differ from retinol? Bioregenerative actives are signaling molecules like growth factors, exosomes, and cytokines that communicate with cells to trigger natural repair processes, while retinol directly binds to nuclear receptors and forces gene transcription changes related to cell turnover and collagen production. Bioregenerative actives work conditionally based on skin's current state and excel at barrier repair and post-procedure recovery, whereas retinol provides more consistent results for wrinkles, texture, and pigmentation regardless of barrier condition, making them complementary rather than interchangeable approaches. Can you use bioregenerative actives with vitamin C and niacinamide? Yes, bioregenerative actives layer well with vitamin C and niacinamide since they operate through different mechanisms. Growth factors and exosomes function as cellular messengers, while vitamin C acts as an antioxidant and collagen cofactor, and niacinamide improves barrier lipid synthesis and reduces inflammation. Apply vitamin C first on clean skin. It requires lower pH for stability and penetration. Wait 10 minutes, then apply bioregenerative serums, followed by niacinamide products, though most growth factors tolerate the pH 5 to 6 range, where niacinamide functions optimally without requiring extended wait times. Are expensive growth factor serums worth the premium compared to peptide alternatives?
Expensive growth factor serums are worth the premium only if they contain properly stabilized, high-concentration recombinant human growth factors, minimum zero point 0.1 parts per million EGF or equivalent, with evidence of third-party testing and appropriate packaging like airless pumps or lyophilized formats. Budget peptide alternatives using biomimetic sequences like Matrixyl 3000 at 3 to 5% concentration or copper peptides at 1 to 2% provide 60 to 70% of the collagen stimulating effect at 1/10 the cost, making them the better value unless you're addressing post-procedure recovery or severe barrier damage where authentic growth factor signaling provides measurably faster results than peptide agonists alone. How long does it take to see results from bioregenerative actives? Bioregenerative actives show barrier improvement and inflammation reduction within 5 to 10 days of consistent use, as cellular signaling pathways respond quickly to growth factor and cytokine messages, while structural changes like increased collagen density and wrinkle reduction require 8 to 12 weeks, since collagen synthesis and remodeling operate on slower timelines. Post-procedure applications accelerate healing by 30 to 40% compared to standard recovery, with visible improvements in redness and texture within 3 to 5 days. But chronic photoaging concerns need minimum 3-month trials to assess efficacy against alternatives like retinoids or high-percentage peptides. Do plant-derived exosomes work as well as human stem cell exosomes? Plant-derived exosomes from sources like Centella asiatica or apple stem cells provide significant anti-inflammatory and antioxidant benefits at 20 to 40% of the fibroblast-stimulating potency of human mesenchymal stem cell exosomes, primarily because plant exosomes lack the specific microRNA sequences that target human collagen genes and growth factor receptors with high affinity. For barrier repair, sensitivity reduction, and general antioxidant protection, plant exosomes at 3 to 5% concentration in $20 to $50 serums deliver meaningful results and represent excellent value. But for maximum collagen stimulation and comprehensive regenerative signaling, human-derived exosomes at concentrations above 10 to the 10th particles per milliliter justify their $150 to $400 price tags in clinical or post-treatment contexts. So here's the summary. What are bioregenerative actives? They're the molecular communication system your skin uses to coordinate repair. Growth factors, exosomes, and cytokines that signal rather than force biochemical changes. These actives excel at barrier restoration and recovery acceleration, but require proper stabilization, adequate concentration, and realistic expectations about their role in a complete routine. Budget formulations using biomimetic peptides, plant stem cell exosomes, and stable growth factor analogs deliver 60 to 80% of the results of luxury serums at 1/5 the cost, provided they use encapsulation technology and protective packaging. These aren't magic molecules, they're biological tools that work best when your skin is actively repairing or renewing tissue. Focus on formulations with transparent concentration data, stabilization methods, and packaging that prevents degradation. Skip serums that list growth factors at the bottom of ingredient lists without specifying form or concentration. The science is legitimate, the marketing frequently isn't. Choose based on molecular reality, not brand prestige, and you'll access genuine regenerative technology without the luxury markup. That wraps up this episode of Luxury Beauty on a Budget podcast. Thanks for spending this time with me. New episodes come out every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, so there's always something fresh waiting for you. If you got something out of this episode, I'd be really grateful if you'd leave a 5-star rating and write a quick review. It's genuinely the best way to help other people who are looking for honest, science-backed beauty info actually find the show.
And make sure you're subscribed or following the podcast so you get notified the second a new episode drops. I'll see you next time.